Check this out. We want you thugs to turn this up. We want the clubs to turn this up. We want the church to turn this up. We want everybody to turn this up. Don't miss it. Bounce. Now bounce. Now what? Bounce. Now what? Bounce. Now what? Bounce. Now what? Wanna dump slugs on the corner where the slang drugs. Only God is taking the blood for the sake of the blood. No shit, just blood. If you thinking it was, leave it there with it needed some love. Jiggaz, cause you got figgaz, you can die quicker. You can ride or die, you can live life with her. Living in a lockdown, so you better tell them all, put the Glock down. 4 mics on the source, think you're hot now. While you run around town with the top down, on the way from the Pompano. Let them know, son, just how the story go. And front for Lauderdale, where to make them yell when they push more weight them yell. In MIA, where the thugs live and die every day. In the hood, where the mamas gotta cry every day. Where the kids listen to, so the slide every day. Okay, sure. In South LA, that's why we die. In MIA, that's why we die. The dirty South, y'all telling these lies, that's why we die. Carolina, that's why we die. ATL, that's why we die. Alabama, Mississippi, young thugs, that's why we die. You got these young girls backing it up, that's why we die. You got these young cats blazing it up, that's why we die. Cash money, that's why we die. No limit, that's why we die. Rockefeller, that's why telling these lies, that's why we die. Got my girls shaking it up in the club, that's why we die. And our young bros jumping them slugs, that's why we die. No limit, that's why we die. Murdering, that's why we die. Rockefeller, that's why telling these lies, that's why we die. Let me tell you somebody, you ain't ready to die. Cause you take your last breath and you close your eyes. Same ones that'll stare right in your mouth. Same ones that'll run all in your house. And the ones that you thought was down with you hit you up in the back with a 22 for the hell of it. So I'm telling it, don't even know who you messing with. So when you hustling every day in these streets, that's drug money. You're leaving people dead in these streets, that's blood money. And then these babies can't even eat, that's not funny. That's why we die. That's why we die. Your words hit them up like a hot slug. Make the girls wanna bounce in a hot tub. See the pain in the eye, never knew love. Let them know that Christ is true love. And they know you drive big pins, big body with it tied in. Navigates in the Escalade, sitting on the blades. And you wanna get paid, everybody wanna nowadays. Black rocks in this road. Whoa, whoa, nigga wanna hit the ceiling, yo. Call you ready to be a sale, shine back in jail. Call the devil, call the slipping, yo. Know how these Jiggaz is, so I'm telling you, baby boy, I'ma keep it real. But when you need them, yo, nowhere around, sonny boy, you know the deal. In LA, that's why we die. New York, that's why we die. East and West Coast telling these lies, that's why we die. You got these young girls backing it up, that's why we die. You got these young cats blazing it up, that's why we die. Cash money, that's why we die. No limit, that's why we die. It's Rockefeller, that's why telling these lies, that's why we die. Got our girls shaking it up in the club, that's why we die. And our young bros pumping them slugs, that's why we die. No limit, that's why we die. Murdering, that's why we die. It's Rockefeller, that's why telling these lies, that's why we die.
78, the little thug hit up 1 or 2, roll the sand, pimp, so fast cash. Mama thought it went last, born with a pipe in hand, cause she did what she did to get the blast. Wanna let it hold it down the street with a pocket full of D in the heat and the cold. I see in the dojo beat in the low, I'm trying to succeed to the key in the boulder. Rap gang got a chain to fold, Chevrolet, little boy, too many young men get sprayed. You brought me slang, 88 and 98, and now for the state, got to go arcade. Tell the playboy to let Christ in, bet you 9 out of 10, thug you got the pen, trying to get dividends, so you slip in the man. Lost old dog, now you bust out the chin, they got you all the way to the MI, ALK in the shots, 55, reach tomorrow, y'all boys try the ball, we gon' fly, y'all boys ain't fall. On the road, y'all smart and cold, sit mode, while we saving the soul, lips swole, cause y'all messing with us, ain't mean to do it, was y'all rough to buy, smart, we do it if you please, whatever you need, gon' buy, and watch the keys, slip the slide in the fives, if I'm running them up, you can still turn around, roll it through the mud, navigate the truck, boy, chicks and chains, ain't nothing to me, count them out, make them change, wood grain, cane, they must pass away, that's why we die, little dog, you gon' have to pay.
You got these young girls backing it up, that's why we die. You got these young cats blazing it up, that's why we die. Cash money, that's why we die. No limit, that's why we die. It's Rockefeller, that's why telling these lies, that's why we die. Got our girls shaking it up in the club, that's why we die. And our young bros jumping them slugs, that's why we die. No limit, that's why we die. Murdering, that's why we die. It's Rockefeller.